another Let's Talk with the Doc. I'm excited to be here this evening, and I am exceptionally excited because of who I have with me. I have our personal regional First Lady, Christina Greenaway, joining me tonight. And on Let's Talk with the Doc, and when I come back, I will be talking to her. Should be an interesting story, so hang in there, my friends. ORB Ministry presents Let's Talk with the Doc. Grace Without Borders podcast. A thought for you. Ask Pastor. And a whole lot more. You never know what's next or who will join the conversation. All right, so it is my pleasure to have Lady Greenaway with me on Let's Talk with the Doc. Welcome to Let's Talk. Good to have you, Lady Greenaway.
Thank you. Good evening. How are you today?
I am doing fine, and I'm glad you look like you're doing fine as well.
Looks can be this evening, but let's
I
let's let's
I
fake it.
understand.
Right, let's fake it.
I I understand that, and I must say, I'm happy that you guys have been traveling, and making it back and forth safely. I know you are a little exhausted because you both have been pushed back and forth with all that's happening in your family. Death of your brother, death of the bishop's sister, and traveling back and forth for funerals. It must be exhausting, and it's not like around the corner flying out of country for both of them. So that must have been exhausting. But I'm glad to see you, and we maybe will get into the struggles of that part. But we want to welcome you to Let's Talk with the Doc, and hopefully we will get to know something about you that we did not know. Because that's what happened on this program. We get to find out more about people that we think we know and we do not know. So here we are this evening welcoming you. And normally what I do, I to hear people's story. What's your story? What's the making of Christina Greenaway? Where did she come from? What her life story is? The highs, the lows, the exciting, the dark, the bright, so that people can be inspired of that. Because what I've discovered is that normally people don't associate people in certain level of society with reality. That's a good term. They say, okay, they see you at this level, and they can't see how you come up the ladder to get to where you are. So when we talk about people's story, then they say, oh my God, a story. She was, he been through all of that. So that is the source of inspiration to other people. So thank you for joining me. And I want to find out from you, where were you born and what was life like in the beginning days of Christina?
Okay, so a little bit of British accent. I was born in the UK, in Birmingham, where we talk like this. And I'm number 11 of 12 children. And as you just mentioned, my brother, my oldest brother recently passed, and now it's 11 of us. And so God has been good. My parents are from Jamaican heritage, and they moved to England, as many did back in the 50s. And therefore, I was the first one born there. The other 10 were born in Jamaica, and the last two were born in the UK. And so I'm
Oh,
number 11.
wow. So everybody else went to the UK except you at 11 and 12.
I would. My younger brother and I were born in England.
Okay.
Everybody else was born in Jamaica.
Where in Jamaica you're from? Your family
It's
origin?
St. Thomas, right up in the country, Landry, Cedar Valley, Trinityville, all of those places. Now, I only know the names. I don't really know the place. I know the names.
Well,
I've been
I
there
meant
one time, but I really don't know all of the background of all of that. I just know the stories because my parents would tell me the stories, but I really don't know the place.
so I'm a little bit more familiar with your parents' origin than you are because I know Trinidadville, Cedar Valley, I know St. Thomas quite a bit. I've spent some time in St. Thomas, so I know a little bit about down by Bath and all of those things. Yeah, I know that. All right, so you're number 11 of 12. So that's a whole disciple. What was it like with 12 of you growing up together? What was it like? Was it a Christian environment? What was it like?
No, it was not a Christian environment. And there were seven of us eventually growing up together because back then, when the parents came, they didn't bring all the children in one go. My father came first, and then he sent for my mom, and then they would bring like one or two at a time, depending on how much they can afford and what airfare they could afford at that time. And they would leave them with the older siblings or with an uncle or with some cousins to take
Yeah,
care of. You know the story. And
that's
so the children were sort of divided up. This one went here, this one went there. So even in that, my siblings had different life experiences of what was really, they will tell you a different story of how they grew up before they got to the UK. So I have a sister that I didn't meet till I was in my 30s.
wow.
I knew of her, but didn't meet her. So that was something that people thought was really strange. How can you have a sister and you don't meet her? Because they were much older. And then my siblings, because I said there are 12 of us, began having children even while my parents were still having children. So I have nieces and nephews my own age
Wow.
and even older. So
Really?
yes, so yes, so that was our experience. So there were seven of us actually in the home growing up together when I was in junior school, and it was not a Christian home at all. Our house was the house where on Saturday night, if you wanted a party, our house was the place to be. My parents were known as the MCs and the hospitality people, and the Kelly's house was the house to go to. So that was quite an interesting experience. It was through my next door neighbor that I even got to go into church because my next door neighbor on Sunday mornings after the parties on Saturday night, when everybody else was asleep, my next door neighbor was going to the Catholic church and she would invite the children to come with them. And so I would walk with them to the Catholic church and go there for an hour. And then I'd come back and go to the opposite side and go to the Methodist church for the next hour. And by then, everybody was beginning to wake up after their Saturday night extravaganza or whatever it was.
You
So
know
that
that is actually interesting to begin with because I could not have thought of that.
mhm.
And so that is already that is news to me. That okay, my parents were the hot stuff in the community, the DJs. If you want to have a party, that's where you come. I could not have thought of that. So that is already breaking news to me. And so I thought, okay, what's the distance between you and your older brother? Because you said you have nieces who are nephews who are older than you are. What's the range between the
Okay.
children?
So my oldest brother, who just passed, was 88 when he passed in September.
Wow.
And so I'm over 20 years younger than, than he was. And my oldest sister is 90, still alive and doing well.
So your
So
older sister is 90.
yes, the firstborn was a girl. So
Wow.
so going to the funeral, people say funeral is for the living. One of the benefits of going to the funeral is that I got to see the rest of the family that spread out all over. There were just three sisters that couldn't come, one because of illness, and the other two were just not in areas that they could make it there. And so, but we FaceTime and we connect. And the amazing thing is that we still try to communicate together and connect together as a family, even though it's fast. And that was something I think is special about my parents, that they kept us all together, and as you know, when you're from the islands, the mentality is, or the culture is, that you respect your elders. So the older children could tell you what to do or could be in charge of you and could rebuke
Yeah,
you, beat you, whatever,
definitely, especially at that age, for sure.
especially at that age. So I grew up with my brother. So there's six girls and six boys. And I am the youngest girl. And so
Okay.
as I just said, my oldest sister is 90.
I
So
could never, I could never imagine you having a sister at 90 years old.
yes,
That
yeah.
is incredible. 90 years old.
My,
That
my,
is,
my family are long livers. My mother
that's,
died 2 months shy of 100.
wow.
So,
Wow.
so we are blessed with long life.
So
Lord,
you have great hopes ahead. So you can keep on planning your future.
I'm going to live till I die. That's the plan.
And so say all of us.
So,
So
yeah.
say all of us. We're gonna leave it. I'm talking to Lady Christina Greenaway, our regional overseer's wife, first lady in our Northeast region, and I'm so excited to talk to her tonight. And if you're just joining us, welcome to Let's Talk with the Doc. It's a good time to hit your share button and invite your friends to join us because we're gonna have a lot to talk about. All right, so you grew up. Tell me about that, the breakaway into getting into church, unplanned, not from parental influence. What triggered you to go with your next door neighbor to go to church? What triggered that?
I think, back then I didn't know, but right now I think it was really the Lord. Um, I didn't like the parties. I didn't like the noise because on Saturday evenings we would move out all of the furniture outside and bring in those big, huge jukeboxes, and
Really?
the children were ushered into the attic. You don't come downstairs until tomorrow, and the house was almost booming, with the sound and the noise,
I can imagine that.
the noise. And so I would always I would always, somehow, my parents, even though they were not churchgoers, even though they lived this kind of lifestyle, they would always talk about the Lord. And there was one scripture that one of my brothers, my older brother, he was actually at the men's retreat for the last few years. He would always say to me, "He he that knoweth," he says, "he that knoweth to do good and doeth it not shall be beaten
With
with
many
many
stripes.
stripes." Yes. He that didn't know will be beaten with a few because he should have known. But the thing about getting beaten, I was not into getting beaten. So I'm just like, okay, Lord, I don't want to get beaten. So I always would love scripture. And, in our culture, there was always the reading of the Bible, Christmas time, Easter time. Even if we didn't go to church, we would read the scriptures together. We would recite the scriptures. We would sing the hymns. And so my parents would still talk about the Lord, and they talk about when they were growing up, because even though they didn't live that life before me, they would talk about being in the mission in Jamaica. They had a mission, and what the mission leader would say and what the mission leader would tell them to do, and they believed that very strongly. So I think a lot of people would come from that Christian background, get to the UK, the US, or wherever, Canada, and then they would start their own thing in the meantime, find a way that they felt was better. But they would still know in their heart of hearts and from their experience who God is and what they were required to do. And it was kind of like they put God on hold,
Yeah,
pretty much.
that's exactly what I was thinking. They
Yes.
know it. It's in their roots. It's in their genes. They grow up in it, but they have to veer off a little bit to explore the world for themselves, and but deep down the seed has been there.
Yes. And the amazing thing was that with all of that, um, my aunt and uncle, my father's sister and her husband, they were pastors in the Church of God of Prophecy. And it was a small little group. And they had service. They rented a church hall, and they would have service on Sunday evenings at 5 o'clock. So they would gather any member of the family that they can get. And so they came for Louise and Edgerton's children, which was, those that would, the five
So
and six.
what's your father's name?
Edgerton.
Hey,
Edgerton.
pause a little bit. My father's name is Edgerton.
Wow. There you go. Yes, Edgerton Uriah.
I
And
see.
so they came and got us and took us to Sunday school and to church. And so it was through that experience that I really found out what salvation and making that commitment to the Lord really was. Even though I'd gone to the Catholic and the Methodist church. It was through the Church of God of Prophecy that I really understood the committal to salvation and making that, saying yes to Jesus and turning your life around.
At that young age, what were your parents' reaction, because they weren't in it, and at that young age, you say like 11, 10, 11, somewhere thereabout.
That's right.
What were their reaction when they said, my little daughter is going to become a Christian and we are not? How did they react to that?
My father thought it was wonderful. My mother thought I was crazy. My mother was like, no way. She was upset with my aunt, saying that she's just trying to build her church. And he was totally against it because he felt that I didn't completely understand what I was doing, and that, I wouldn't be able to follow through. And if I made this commitment, I should be sure what I was doing. The amazing thing about that was that she told me afterwards that when she asked me, why am I getting baptized? And I said, well, if I should die, where would I go? And she didn't have an answer for me. And so she sort of reluctantly said yes to my aunt. And my mother got saved at my baptism.
Oh, wow. You see that? That's great news. That is great news. You know what? As you said, that's something that pops in my mind. I read something about the Christian martyr. Christian martyr. I remember one of these disciples that they were burning these guys at the stake, and they were killing for whichever way they were martyring them. And one of these guys who somebody reported on about his Christian faith, and upon the time of his death, he walked up to his martyrdom with such joy in his face, and like he was going to something good. And the author said the very person in the audience who made the report and caused his death walked up behind him, confessed Christ, and died with him.
Wow.
So at your mom's resistance of your youthful innocence of getting baptized, and now at your baptism she got saved. Tell us about that. Tell me a little bit about what did she say happened to her.
So, after you get baptized and then the preacher comes out and asks if there's
Yeah,
anybody
yep,
else, and my mother got up then and gave her testimony and was crying, saying that how she tried to stop me
Oh, wow.
from getting baptized because she figured I didn't know. But as she watched me make that decision, and as I asked her, if the Lord should come tonight, what's going to happen to me? And she couldn't give an answer. She said she just had to, look at herself again, check herself again. And my mother, from that night, made up her mind to serve the Lord. My father, who was excited, he just carried on his good old way for another 15 to 20 years. But
Oh, my goodness.
my mother, she just said no, and she began turning her life around and following the Lord. And so that was a wonderful thing. I was, as I said, 11, 12, and never looked back since. And something what was interesting, a lot of people would say to me, supposing you backslide.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm saying, why would that even be an option? I don't even know why people, because if you trust the Lord to save you, why don't you trust Him
To
to
keep you
keep
right.
you? But
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people would say that, well, I'm not going to get saved because supposing I backslide. Well, supposing you stay saved, that's what the Lord calls us to do. Calls us.
Where you're leaning, if you're leaning to get to backslide, you will. If you're leaning to stay safe, then you will.
Yeah, so that never entered my mind of supposing I backslide. All that entered my mind was that I wanted to serve the Lord. I wanted to know more about the Lord, and I didn't want to go to hell for sure. And so I wanted to learn and to know everything I needed to do to follow the Lord. So seeing where I am today and seeing where I came from, who would have thought it? This,
Who would have thought it?
yeah.
Uh, um, so, as you both grow in your salvation, in your faith, your youthful faith and your mother's youthful faith as well. She was older but still youthful. What kind of conversation you both have going to church, walking away from everybody else? You both going to church. What are some of the stories you talk about as you got older and your mom see that, oh, she's still holding on now, she's moving? What was their conversation and that?
Well, the interesting thing, funnily enough, God rest their souls, as I told you, it was my uncle and aunt. So my mom, sort of felt she couldn't go there because she knew more than them. So even even though they were very instrumental in our conversion, she wanted to find a church like what was back home. So she was looking for this church like
Oh.
a place called Muffet Hill where they used to have this meeting, and she wanted a church like that. So she looked around for a little while. She did think I was a little bit too committed because every time the church doors open, I wanted to be there and wanted to be involved in everything. And she didn't think that that was necessary. She felt Sunday was enough.
Okay,
Um,
okay.
we took her a while to catch up, you know. But once I started, my aunt and my uncle, they did a lot in in the preparation of my spiritual formation, in teaching, and as you know, back in those days, in those small churches, they taught you everything. You needed to learn how to give your testimony. You needed to learn all these scriptures. You had to witness. We went out on the street, youth life team, all of that stuff, going on mission trips. And as we continued, so it was quite a few years later before Mom joined Church of God of Prophecy. But she was committed to serving the Lord. She just had to find where she wanted, find her niche of where she wanted to be, and it took her a while. So we didn't have a lot of conversation. It was more like, church can't take over your life. You have this to do first. So she didn't see church as serious or as important as I saw it at the time through the ministry that I was working with. But she made her way there. She made her way there.
So the difference is that she got into it as an adult, and you got into it and being shaped by it. So that's a whole different story. I'm
Okay.
talking to Lady Minister Christina Greenaway, our regional first lady in the northeast region of the United States, and I'm so excited to have her with me, my friends. Thank you for joining me. It's good time to hit your share button and tell your friends. Guess who is on? Lady Christina Greenaway. All right. So growing up now, you're going to school now. What was it like going to school? Christian girl, England. I don't know what the atmosphere is like in England. As a young Christian going to church back then. What was it like? Were you a target of being the Christian girl, or were you well accepted as and respected? Because some places say, "Oh, don't do this because she's a Christian," or they say, "Oh, yeah, a Christian girl, so what?"
Um, I think it was more the respectful side because at school I was always looked at the one who everybody wanted to confide in. We would have a thing called Christian Union, Christian Fellowship, and we would have those meetings in the lunch break. So when others was outside playing their games in the playground, we would have a group of all the Christians together talking and sharing. So I was able to do a lot of that when I was at school. Of course, you would always have those that thought you were crazy and you were
Yeah.
show off or whatever it was. But I did have a lot of opportunities to share my faith, not that so much, telling people what to do, but because of the Christian Union, we could talk together and pray together. And back then, we had assemblies at school in the mornings. So we would sing hymns and we would have scriptures, and the schools were more Christian
Right.
oriented than they are now. You
Right.
know, so your headmaster, the headmistress, they would come and you'd have prayers, scripture readings before you went into class. And so it was more acceptable than it is today. So yeah, I had no problem back then. So I was able to, continue my Christian experience and just keep looking towards the Lord of where I wanted to be further along in the Church of God of Prophecy.
All right. So as you grew up, what when did you say when did Christina say this is what I want to become? This is what I want to pursue. When did your career focus, when you did begin to focus and said I want to become that or that or that?
I'm not sure exactly. I know that through our church, we had a thing called um, the youth mission team. And in England, we would have these trips. Bishop T.A. McCullough would organize these huge trips where from England we would travel to the General Assembly. And so we would save up. So all of our vacation time was either in something to do with church, General Assembly, youth camp, or youth mission team. And coming to the General Assembly, I remember Terry Mahan was the national youth director at the time, and he was talking about, going on youth mission team. And so I would save my money and determine that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to go on mission. I wanted to share. Even in our local areas, we would have Saturdays, we would go out into the districts on the street corners with our scriptures, singing songs, doing witnessing. And our church, unlike so much that it is now, encouraged our young people to know the scripture, not to read it. You had to memorize the scriptures, and then you had to go out and tell somebody, because that's what you did when you got saved. You shared your salvation. You shared what Jesus had done for you. And we had a lot of open air meetings and people out on the street corners. And so that was done a lot. So I was very involved in that in our church, in our youth camps, being camp counselor, as we called it back at the time, on mission teams, in district meetings, and helping out. And when I got into my early 20s was when I began working for the national overseer of the church and got even more involved in, church work as I continue to be today.
So that is interesting. So you have never actually gone out into the secular world. It's like you're just like shaped in, focus in, and the church from all the growing up to your early 20s.
I worked at the West. I worked at the West. It was a college at the time, West Bromwich College of Commerce and Technology, and so I was always working in an educational environment. I studied there. Then right after getting through with back then it was shorthand and typing, my secretarial degree. Then I got a job at the same place where I studied, and from there I stayed there a few years, and then was offered a job to work for the national overseer at the time after his secretary moved on for her maternity leave. And so,
Okay.
so I worked for the church, started working for the church for many, many years.
Wow. Wow. So it is almost church since 11.
Almost,
Almost church since 11. Oh
almost.
my goodness. Oh my goodness. Well, you are well shaped, well bred, they call it, right? So okay. 20s, growing up now, where did life veer off? How did life reshape itself, or say, okay, now I'm an adult, where my life goes from here now? I'm just, I'm working at the overseer's office. What's my next step? What's the next step in my life?
Well, the way that I was gearing, my focus was to just continue wherever, you sing that song, "Where He May Lead Me, I
Will you
will."
lead me? I will go. I've learned to trust him, so, right?
And while I was minding my own business, this young man by the name of Leroy Greenaway came on vacation to England, and
Oh.
so we actually met each other on a mission team. When I went on the mission team back in 1981, he was the evangelist for the team, and myself, along with about 8 or 9 others from England, were the group, the teamsmen. We went in 2 weeks, giving out tracts, and guess where they sent us, Bishop? I put down on my application I wanted to go to Thailand.
To
That was
Thailand.
Thailand. I wanted to go to Thailand, saved all my money for Thailand. And when we got to the US for our orientation, they realized that with the travel from England, then to the States, and then to Thailand, with the amount of hours, by the time we got there, we'd be so jet lagged, it wouldn't make sense. So it was better to send us to someplace in the States because we already had a 5 hour difference there. So
Wow.
we ended up in Boston, Massachusetts.
From a destiny intended for Thailand to Massachusetts.
Who would have thought? So our mission team ended up in Boston, and we ended up at the church there with Bishop Peters and Bishop Thompson, and back then it was Bishop Boone who was the overseer at the time, for Southern New England, and so we were there before doing revivals, witnessing on the streets, and then going into the convention. Spent 2 weeks there, and then went back to England. And 7 years later, Leroy Greenaway made a trip to England to meet some of the friends he had met on the team. Not me, some other friends.
Well, I'm not gonna speak for him, and I'm not gonna say, because that could be a defensive mechanism. Say, yeah, he didn't come to see me, but who knows? Who knows? So,
Yes.
so out of that trip, that missions trip,
Mhm.
you actually met in the U.S. on the missions trip,
That's right.
and then he came to England for vacation.
7 years later,
7 years, six or
later.
7 years later. Okay, all right. So if he was on, I would ask him. Maybe he wasn't thinking what you were thinking. So his mission was maybe a little bit different from what your mission was. So 6 years later, it was a continuation of his mission. So we find out.
Yes.
Okay, so tell me how that happened on his vacation. What happened?
Well, all of us got together, the team's members got together. Um, and I was working, as I told you, at the national office. And so he was known, people knew him because he preached. And so a lot of the young men came to the office to meet him. And so they were having this wonderful conversation. And I, of course, was working in the office. And, and so after they finished, he came downstairs and wanted to know how come I wasn't joining them upstairs in the office. And I was like, well, I'm working here. But long story short, from that second meeting, he discovered that this lady, moi, was, had more to me, there was more to her than he had thought at first. So,
So
so
so so he made further discovery.
he made further discoveries. And so, yes, we started from there back in 87, 1987. And as he would have it, and as the Lord would have it, within a year, we were married and moved to Canada.
Oh wow! So he wasn't joking.
He wasn't
He
joking.
wasn't. He was really on mission. So I'm not sure if he came on vacation or he came on hunting. I'm not sure. Or make I don't know if it was vacation or he come to do searching. Maybe or
The Lord,
maybe.
the Lord set him up. Put it that way.
Okay, okay, okay. All right, all right, all right. You know what? At the end, when we look at it where it is now, we can say, God, you did that. You made a good hit on that. You made a good hit on that. So 1 year after that, you were married, and you moved from. So where were you
We,
when you married? You
I
married
was,
England, or you
I was, in,
married?
we were in Birmingham, England. I was in Birmingham, England, and we're still working for the national overseer. I think it was the third overseer at that point, and we got married with a lot of encouragement from friends. I saw Lady Flo on here later. She was one of the instigators
Oh,
uh,
really?
of making sure that happened, and moved to Montreal, Canada, and that was where Bishop and Lady Clark, who you had on a few months ago, they were the pastors there, and they had just been sent to Zaire, and then we got sent to.
Oh.
He was already pastoring at that church single, and then he came and got his wife in England, and then I joined him and continued pastoring there.
So you say he came and got his wife. That's speaking in the third person.
That's right. He came and got me from the UK,
Okay, okay, that sounds more like it.
brought me to him in Montreal, Canada.
Okay, so you married and you were still working, and he's here pastoring. He's in Canada pastoring, within that time.
He was already pastoring,
Right.
so when he came on vacation, he was a pastor at that time, and so we met, and then when we got married and moved back to Montreal, I joined him in the pastorate there.
Okay. All
Uh,
right.
as I mentioned, it was the Clarks before who were there, and the Lord killed the
19,
Lord.
1988.
That's right.
1988. Moved to Canada where she served as pastor's wife. Okay, so I wanted to ask the question, and that maybe I'll repeat that a little bit later. What was it like now? Because now your life is changed in two ways, at least two ways. Like
Yeah,
boom,
yeah.
right? Two ways. I'm married, and I'm a pastor's wife. Like all together in one package.
And another thing, and I'm in a new country.
And a new country, yeah, three things, yeah. So I mean, culture change, life experience change, relocation, job assignment. I mean, how did you process all of those things at a young age? Now I'm married, I take on the responsibility of a wife, and now I'm married, not only married, but I'm married to a pastor, and now I take on the responsibility of a pastor's wife, and I'm not even in my own culture. So everything is all new.
Everything was all new, and also in Montreal, the prominent language was
So,
French.
so that's actually Montreal. Oh
Yes,
wow! So that's four things. So now it's French as well.
it was French as well, and I was very British and knew no French. And they encouraged you, as anyone coming into the country, the first thing you had to do is to go to French school, French
Wow.
immersion, and you had to go every night, Monday to Friday, from 6 till 10, because they were determined that you would learn this language.
Wow.
And so I didn't get into the school immediately because there were so many people going there. But let me take different stages, because you asked about getting married.
Yeah, there are three things right there. Yeah.
That was a good thing. That was a very good thing. And then coming to the local church, that was a really amazing thing, because you would think that when you got there, you would have to sort of learn and assimilate and all. But the people were so warm and welcoming. They made it easy for me to settle in there and to work with them. And I didn't even remember that I'd come from a different country, because it was just like another church family.
Right.
that I was in. It was only when I was out of church that I remembered that I was in a different country. But once I was in the church world, it was just like another congregation that I just moved to across the ocean. Didn't even think about that. So the Lord really helped us there with that and just made the blending very easy. I think one of the other things was that in my mind, I'd already determined when I said yes and that we decided to get married, that wherever the Lord is leading you, that He's gonna fix it for you. If the Lord is determined that we should be together, He's going to make everything else work. And that was something coming in as a pastor's wife, because people would say things like, "Well, how hard was it?" Some of my friends would say to me, "So what's it like marrying a pastor?" And I'm like, I'm not so much marrying a pastor. I'm marrying a guy who happens to be a pastor. So I wasn't, I didn't think of it about like marrying a pastor. And I think that's some of the mistakes that people make because they think about the position. And, first of all, it was more about who we were together and what God has called us together to do. Not, oh, she's marrying a, because my mother was so excited. Oh, she's going to marry a pastor.
She was excited about that.
She was so excited. She didn't
Ah.
see him. She didn't see him as this guy. She saw him. She's marrying a pastor.
Well, back then for sure. Back then, that far back, pastoral offices were highly respected. I mean, there's still a good level of respect for that, but I can understand a woman's daughter getting married to a pastor. That was a big deal. That was a big deal. Whatever was the driving force behind it, but that was a big deal. So I could see her, feeling good about that.
Yeah, she felt very good. The whole family. Um, you know, Christine found this man across the seas, a pastor. um, you know, but I think in all of my Christian experience, to me, it was, where is the Lord taking you next?
Right.
He called me as a child. I went on, through my young age, being as following as much as I can in the church work, trying to be faithful throughout there, going to different churches. Even in the local church that I was at in Dudley, involved in everything, worship leader, double MB leader, Sunday school teacher, fundraiser, pastor's aide, doing everything. Uh, desiring to be faithful in all of these areas. Moved from one area, went in Slough, another area of England for a while, working there with the overseer at a local church. They're getting very involved there. And not so much, I'm taking my focus onto what am I going to get, but what does the Lord want? And I know kind of sounds super spiritual, but I think it's really what helped me, because coming from one country to the next is a big jump. And it can throw you off because people come and they miss their family and they get homesick, and I don't speak the language, and I haven't found the job that I want yet, and it's so different. But when and I'm sure you've experienced that too, Doctor, that when you know that God has called you to a certain place, you are resolved that everything's going to be fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything's going to be working out. And so you just trust that. If it's God's will for us to be here, then it's going to be fine. And
Even when even when in the initial stages it doesn't look like it or you can't even see it, but yeah,
you
gotta
trust
believe
it.
it.
You trust it to be you. You trust it to be so. You trust it to be fine.
Amen. Amen. I'm talking to Lady Christina Greenaway, of course, the First Lady of the Northeast region of the United States, the wife of our regional overseer, Bishop Leroy Greenaway. I'm just hearing their story. And somewhere, Bishop, behind you may be listening. I almost guarantee you're listening. Maybe one of these days you tell me about that missions trip that you went to England for. Whether that was really a missions trip or you were just on a mission. Yeah.
Let him tell that.
They're gonna tell me about that. Is a missions trip or just a man on a mission? All right. Okay. So now you're married. You're in a new place. You're a pastor's wife. You're learning French, and now. At what point did you guys have children? How early in the marriage did you have your first child?
Well, early. He took long to find me. Just so you know, he took long to find me. So once we found each other, with about the second year, we had Jessica.
Oh,
And so yeah, so and that was, the church was so happy that their pastor found a wife, and now they having children. So that was beautiful for us both. And yeah, within the first few years of our marriage, we had Jessica and James.
so they were close to each other.
Yes, they were close to each other, and the church was close to them, and helped us to raise them. They came in and learned more French than I ever did,
Of course,
because
because their minds are still young. They're learning it from the beginning.
their minds are still young. And I was blessed to work at an English-speaking university, McGill University. So the French wasn't as adamant for me to learn at that time, and so I just needed to learn enough French to get by. So not as others had to do, to be totally bilingual. So I learned enough to get by and to survive for the time.
Wow. That's interesting. That is interesting. I'm just getting to know the story about Lady Greenaway. Of course, everyone has a story, and everyone's story is unique. And from the beginning of the conversation, the uniqueness of her story with her mother and her baptism, and the whole background is an amazing one. So as you grow up now not grow up, but you're married, you having children, and you spend what 14 years in Canada.
Yeah, a little bit more than that. 15 and a half years spent in Canada. And then we were asked to leave and move to Delaware, the Mid Atlantic region. And I'm sure you've heard about the Mid Atlantic region before in some of your interviews and stories that you've had. So we were sent to the Mid Atlantic region. The children, Jessica was 12, James was 9. It was a difficult time for them. And it was challenging for us because it was difficult for them. But we believed it was
Was it difficult because of what was most difficult? Just the transition, moving from place to place, relocating, or was it what made it that difficult?
Montreal West was a thriving church. There was a lot of young people. The church was happening, and they had a lot of friends there. And we were very involved in the church. They were very involved in the Sunday school, the children's group, and all that was going on. And then we became regional overseers, and we were not in our own local church. We were visiting all these different churches each week. We were at a different church. They were unsettled. And so it took them a while. They made it very clear they did not like it at all. They missed their friends. They missed their church family that loved us and them very dearly. And so even though we made up in our minds, we realized that age, if we were going to move, we couldn't wait till later.
Mm-hmm.
And so for us, in our response to the Lord, that was the best time for us. It wasn't the best time, as I would say, for them, but the Lord helped us get through that transition, because had it been a little bit later, they probably would have said, leave us
Leave
here.
us here, right? Yeah.
But
We
the first year was hard, but now they wouldn't have it any other way. They wouldn't have it any other way now. But the first year was hard.
and change and transition is always a challenge. People don't like change. Even when it changes for the better, it's until you discover that it's for the better. But just the fact that you have to make a change, pull up your roots, and at that age, they've already established their relationship with their little church
Mhm.
friends, and
Right.
and especially they got into the Mid Atlantic, and they don't like they're not rooted now. They're like mobile, up and down. So they can't really build relationship because they see new people here, see new people there, see new people there. So I can understand the yearning for what was back then.
That's
But
right.
as you say, eventually, people understand this is my life now, and how do I make the best of what it is now?
Yes, we did a lot of praying for them. We did a lot of praying, and learned, about the struggles of dealing with kids at that age. And as I pause to say that we cannot forget that in our ministry, how it will affect the whole family. And so the Lord really had to help us with them. They needed to know that we were there for them. They needed to know that they were loved. They needed to know that it was not just about ministry for us, but it was about ministry and them. And as we did that, that helped us to cross that bridge from, pre teenage to teenage, high school, college. And as you know, we stayed there for a while and then we moved again. So, yes, we were
But
on the move.
this time when you moved, they weren't just pulling up like you did.
No, they were both in college at the time, so they were fine. They were
They
just
were
like,
fine.
yeah, they were good.
One of the questions that I want to ask, because I observe them, those kids, and especially Jessica. She's outgoing. She is, not laid back like um
James,
what like James, Jessica James. She's not laid back like James. I wanted to ask the question, which of you, what of your characteristics do they reflect?
so James is calm like his mother. James is
Okay, okay, all right, okay.
calm like his mother.
I'm going to leave a question mark on that one.
Jessica is very outspoken and deliberate in what she needs to say, like her father. They both have excellent personalities. They are people person, and I think they get that from both of us. Jessica is a school counselor. They're not afraid to talk to people. James, however, did communications in college, and I was surprised that he loves to be in front of the mic. Kind of surprised me. I tell Jessica that she will be the preacher in the family. She denies it to this day, but I'm like, you have too much to say. The Lord's going to put some stuff in your mouth.
The Lord's gonna open her mouth. She has the presentation and the drive and the passion to speak. So maybe that's gonna let her speak for him. I'm a little bit well, from my little observation. I see personally me. I see a lot of you and Jessica in terms of, you know well, I mean, the father is actually a lively man too. So I see some of that outgoing
Yes, she looks like me.
physical expression.
She looks a lot. She looks a lot like me. And when it comes to worship and being in church, we are very much alike in that way. Um, but when it comes to, I will be more diplomatic in
Okay,
addressing
okay,
something.
okay, okay.
He,
All right,
he's
okay.
very forward in saying what needs to be said,
Cut
and
and dry.
cut and dry.
Cut and
James is very diplomatic.
yeah, I could see James being diplomatic.
That's right.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see that.
But
I could see that.
as she gets older, she says things like, "Mom, I can't believe I'm so much like you," Um, but yes, we're very happy to see how they've grown up. And we just, James is in Delaware again and helps out at the church there with the music.
Good for
Uh,
him.
there, Jessica's right here in Albany with us.
Oh,
Um,
she's in Albany now.
she lives right here with us with her
Oh,
husband. She met her husband here and stayed here with him.
oh.
So yeah, she's a few minutes down the street from where we live.
I didn't.
So
I well, I didn't know that. I didn't know. I knew she got married. I didn't know that. I didn't know she was in Albany. Oh,
she
okay.
lives right down the street, right here in Albany. Teaches at well, she used to teach, but now she's school counselor at one of the
Okay.
schools.
Kudos to her. Kudos to her. Give her a shout out from me, and she may be somewhere in the scene listening, or maybe listen afterward because she might be busy. But give a shout out to them for me. All right. Tell me now. In terms of communication relationship, what's the what's the difference? How would you calculate or assess being the pastor's wife at a local level and the overseer's wife at a regional or state level? How do you compare those if you can?
I can. So earlier you said something about climbing the ladder,
Mm-hmm.
and the highest ladder is the pastor's wife's ladder. So like, there's nothing like being in the local church with the people, growing with them, seeing them, baptizing their babies, marrying them, seeing their
Mm-hmm.
experiences, crying, praying with them, and building that relationship. Doing regional work as you don't get to sort of make those ties as quickly as you'd like because you're going from place to place visiting. And so I'm grateful. Did I lose you,
No, no, you're okay. You're okay.
or you just put me on main screen? So um, traveling around, you don't get to build those bonds as much as you would like. I've been blessed in the Northeast region. Say that I try to connect with people and stay with them and call them, and they get surprised and they're like, you're calling me?" And I'm like, "Yes, because we're in the people business. Whether you're overseer's wife or pastor's wife, it's the people business. Of course, with the pastor's wife, you're right in that local church and you get to
Mm-hmm.
build there. And as a regional overseer's wife, you have to work a little harder to stay connected with everybody across the region, across the city, wherever it is, to let them know that everybody still matters. And of course, we try also to deal with the pastor and his wife as our first responsibility. And then we also try to connect with the local church when we can through um, district conventions, through regional events, leadership conferences, ladies enrichment, couples retreat. Uh, and so people say, you guys are everywhere because we want to be amongst the people. We want to be amongst the people. And that's the only way to do that. Because working in an office is great, but working with the people, there's nothing like that. Right, Pastor?
You are right, and you are perfectly right. So you would say now that your skills, building your skills at the local church level, um, being the pastor of the congregation helps you to become the pastor of pastors, because now that is now pastor of pastors, because now it's pastors everywhere are under your leadership. So while you're not in a local level, but the skills, the relational aspect of the skills to relate to the congregation carries over into being pastors for pastors, and not just pastors for members.
I think being having served as pastors and pastors' wives ourselves helped us to realize the importance of staying connected, and knowing that there's somebody there that cares, that you're not out there alone. So having served as that, we now respond to our pastors and their spouses as how we feel that we would have liked to have been responded to. Um, we are there for you. We want to talk with you. We want to know what's going on. We don't want to just be isolated in an office. Administration is important, but people relationship is even more important. And that's what we also need to remember. And it's just an extension. It's an extension because it's just like little arms stretched out with little different blocks all around the place. But we're all here to work together and to serve together with each other. So I think that's something that we learned, that, we needed help, and we were blessed to have people that helped us, that we could call on, that we could talk to. Sometimes I feel that the pastors, or the pastors, I think that if they call their regional supervisor or regional leader, it means they don't know what they're doing. And that's so far from the truth. Because if you didn't know what you're doing, you wouldn't be in your position in the first place. That's why you're put there, because there was confidence placed in you. But it's also good to know that there's someone that will walk alongside you, that's there to pray with you, that you can talk to, and you don't have to feel intimidated that they're going to look any less at you, because we're all human, we're all called to serve, we all have different responsibilities, but God placed you where you're at. And you have to believe if God placed you there, He's going to give you the gifts and the ability to do what you need to do in there, and put people in your life that will help you with what you're called to do.
I think some of the challenge might be if people didn't weren't familiar with being checked up on, and
Mhm.
somebody calling and I want to have a relationship with you. If you were left on your own for a long time and nobody really checking on you, that could be a shift in how they react to it, because oh my god, it may be like you say, like they're micromanaging me, so like, oh boy, they're keeping an eye on me now. But I must give you both credit in how you establish relationship with the region, and how accessible you are, and how relatable you both are, and especially how you communicate with the leaders from an administrative level. Um, how would you compare administration at the local church versus administration at the regional level? What's the most complicated part of that?
Okay, so it's totally different, because at the local church level, it's much smaller, and you're not looking to the members to do any kind of administration response to you. At the regional level, you're working with leaders that you have a different expectation from, and you don't always get that same response that you're expecting. You think, well, these are leaders; they should know better, um, and you don't. So you have to have be more. You have to be more patient.
So
Uh,
it's like children versus adults, right? Children versus adult, dealing
yeah,
with children versus adult.
sometimes, but I think it's also alerting people to what is needed, and that we're there to help you get to where you need to be. Because in the administrative work in the regional office, it's it's a support system. Now, I have been blessed that before I came into the regional office, worked in administration. Not every overseer's wife works in administration. Some are nurses, some are teachers, doctors, engineers doing different things. Um, it's just that, my calling, and what I was chosen to do was administration. So it works well for me, but not everybody has, that. Not everybody does that. And coming into some of our offices, the funding isn't there to find the right person to do that in the different areas. And so the overseer's wife is forced into a square peg when that's not really what they're called to do. So that can make it difficult for them. I am blessed that I get to do what I love, and I get to work with someone I love, and I get to work with people I love. And so it works very, very good for me.
Can't get better than that. I am talking to Lady Christina Greenaway. I'm gonna give her a chance to get a drink of water.
Thank you.
And I'm going to give her a chance to get a drink of water and wipe her sweat if she's perspiring, and then come back and we continue and see what else we can glean from
Mhm.
her long service to the kingdom of God in administration level, in pastoral level, and in relationship. So when I come back, I will continue the conversation. Good time for you to hit your share button and tell your friends I'm talking to the regional first lady in the Northeast US and Bermuda. When I come back, I will be talking to her, hanging right there. Everybody has a story, and just like you are unique, so is your story unique. Every Wednesday, I talk to somebody else about their story or some issue that is burning that's relevant. Maybe one of these days I could talk to you about your story. Every week, live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter about somebody's story on Let's Talk with the Doc. Maybe one of these days I could talk to you or somebody you know who has a unique story that they want to share.
Every Wednesday, 8 p.m., join ORV Ministries on Let's Talk with the Doc, live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. There is a story, something to encourage and inspire you. You may even have a life-changing experience. You never know what's next or who will join the conversation. Stay connected. Subscribe to ORV Ministries YouTube channel. Follow on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
Follow me on Facebook, subscribe to my YouTube channel, check it out on Twitter, and of course, follow me on TikTok. Let's journey together. There's a lot for us to talk about.
Wow.
The 7 churches of Asia Minor, the churches in Revelation. Have you ever wondered how relative they are to the churches today? Get a copy of this book, The 7 Churches of Asia Minor, and it will unveil truth to you. Chances are you'll find your own church related to one of these churches, and you might not like what you see, or maybe you love what you see. But get a copy of this book and begin to discover why Christ sent those 7 letters to 7 churches and addressed them separately based on their character. All right, my bad on that. All right, thank you, Lady Greenaway. We know you're tired and we know you're exhausted because you have been traveling, and I would be remiss if I didn't talk about what it has been for you and your husband and families for the past couple of weeks. How strange it is that both of you lost a sibling in the same time, almost the same time. I mean, and your back and forth Caribbean travel and your England travel and ups and down in your life. How are you guys navigating through all of that regional leadership thing? And I mean, everything is just like a rush season. Everything is happening in the same couple of weeks.
That was kind of unusual, but the Lord has helped us. My brother, I knew, was unwell. As I said, he was 88.
Mm-hmm.
So we knew that he was ailing and planned to go see him. Unfortunately, I got there a few days after he passed, stayed in England for 10 days in the hopes that they would have had the funeral before I returned or would have allowed me to extend my trip. That was not to be. It was going to be at least a month or so later.
Wow.
And on returning home the Wednesday evening, Saturday, after attending a funeral for one of our pastor's sons, we were informed of the sudden passing of my husband's sister. So that was more shocking because she wasn't sick, so to speak, and so that caught the whole family by surprise. She was in Trinidad. We heard that on the Saturday, and a week and a half later, her funeral was to be. So that was very stressful on the family. But it's the amazing thing is that when family gets together, even at these events, even though it's stressful before, we remember that we're family. We remember who we are, and the Lord. There's always going to be some little bits and pieces, but the Lord helped, and so we were grateful and blessed by those who called and prayed for us, and that was one encouraging thing. The regional prayer team, our pastors and members were praying for us. They called and let us know that they were praying for us, and that really helped us as we traveled. There were some that was telling us we needed to cancel the leadership conference because it was going to be a lot, but we know how busy the Northeast region is. And we knew that it was important to have this event. And so the Lord just gave us strength, because right following that, announcing the pastor at the Bronx Church, the very next day after the leadership conference and being at the Bronx Church, we were on our way to England. And that time difference is what makes it, that didn't help. For my brother's funeral, we left Monday, arrived Tuesday, funeral was Wednesday, and we had to be back within a week, to do what we needed to do. This seems to be a time where so many unexpected deaths, sudden deaths are happening. It's like the Lord is trying to teach us, alert us, prepare us for some things. Because I know most of our pastors, they're having one funeral after another, whether it's old and young, in our churches today. So it seems to be a time. COVID kind of shocked us a couple of years ago, but even without COVID, I'm not saying COVID's gone away, but even now that COVID deaths have slowed down, there are other deaths that are happening, and people are losing family members and friends. And so it was very challenging. And as I said, I just got back a couple of days ago. But the time with family was precious, and it allowed us to acknowledge that we need each other, and we need to treasure every moment. Because the song we used to sing when we were growing up in church, I don't know about tomorrow, I just live from day to day.
Right?
Oh my gosh, that song has become so real now. We really don't know about tomorrow. That writer, if he was around now, that would be a #1 song.
That was futuristic, right? It was written for the future. And yes, as you said, oh my God, have we been through it for the past almost 3 years? It's like when COVID broke, we thought nobody knew what it was going to be, but at worst, we thought maybe in a few months, or worst, a year, we would have been back to normal. And we're almost 3 years now, and still trying to get back to normal. And the struggle has been real. And as you said, we don't know what is in the air, but beyond the COVID or no COVID, we're having young people are dying so frequently, and everybody is being touched with death of loved ones, and shocking ones. And as you said, for you it was kind of expected it gonna happen. For the bishop, it was like, oh my God, how did this happen? We weren't looking for it, and then it happened the same time, within the same little season that you have to attend to both of them. That must have been stressful and bother you, but thank God for the giving grace. And I must say, the regional leadership thing, I haven't been to the last two because of the death of my father-in-law last year, right, and all that within the same season. But this one, I must say, was one of the better ones that I have attended. That I have attended. So kudos to you guys on the planning on that one and the execution of it. My personal condolences continue to you and the family. And I was going to say that it is so unfortunate that we come together because we are forced to come together.
Yes.
in these times, and that's when we get to see each other and communicate and hug and embrace each other. Life does not allow us just to plan this when everybody is doing well. We just say, let's put it together and have a family reunion. That is so hard to do, but now death and these circumstances demand it, and now we have to make the best of it while we grieve.
Yes. One of my sisters, one of my 5 sisters, planned to be at the funeral, and she took 3 weeks, planned to spend 3 weeks with us in the UK. The first week went great. By the second week, she took ill. And long story short, she's been in the hospital for the last 2 weeks. So she never got to come to the funeral, and is in hospital right now. So we do need your prayers for her.
Wow.
But I'm saying that to say this, that before people were saying, well, I can't do this and I can't do that, and then life just turns around in a way that we don't expect it to. And so it seems that in these times that we are living, we have to be purposeful about what we say, what we do, and how we live in these times. So many people, as you know, Pastor, are still not coming back out to church. They're looking for excuses, and well, that tells something about their relationship, because the Bible tells us about not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together. Yet we are choosing social media, different platforms, and staying in our homes. But we have to realize that in these last of the last days, we're still called to serve, we're still called to do, and especially as church called, God called people, we have a responsibility of how we need to live and to lead by example, to do and to be. So I want to encourage our people that, don't stay behind your closed door, but come out among the people, choose to be safe, take your precautions, but we still have a mission, a commission, a story, a testimony to tell others, to be among the people, and to let people know who our Lord is in these last times and in these final times.
I would to God that resonate across the board. I would to God that everybody hears that, because I'm hoping that we would just wake up. I think we've become chronic in sitting behind the camera, sitting behind the screen. We become chronic and comfortable because we don't have to get up early, we don't have to get dressed, we don't have to get out. We just kind of stay behind there, and the camera is off, and we just like stay there and watch and listen from a distance. But that is not relationship. That is not good for relationship. It is not good for connectivity, because behind the screen you can only see but you can't communicate. And so the forsaking of ourselves, our assembling of ourselves together, is in the long term perilous. We can understand there are some people who their circumstance will not ever allow them to be out. Those are the people who should benefit from the live streaming, but it should not be an alternative for those who can make it to the house, because there's nothing greater than iron sharpening iron, as the Bible teaches us.
I'm reminded of the scripture that tells us how Jesus was in the temple as was his custom to do.
As was his custom.
As was his custom to do. And it's almost as if we were looking for an excuse to get out of that custom, when that's where we ought to be, in the house for those people. There's still people coming on the streets looking for the church to be open. And, sometimes we're just so excited about the Zoom room that was supposed to just be a crutch for a time, not a replacement for the time.
Not a replacement.
Yes.
And some people are comfortable to make it a replacement. And the danger is you can't close it down, because if you close it down, there's somebody else hoping somewhere, and they're gonna be gone there. So instead of having a half of them, you're gonna have none of them. So it's
a great platform, but it needs to be used. It needs to be used wisely. it needs to be used for the purpose that it was created. But the house of God was also created for a purpose. And so it's supposed to be an extension of,
It should
not
be.
an instead of.
It should be.
And
I
it's,
100% agree.
yeah, yeah.
100% agree. And I hope that that conviction will
Mhm.
come into our hearts before it's too late. Amen. I am just about wrapping up soon with
Amen.
Lady Greenaway.
Amen.
I know she will want to go. But I'm so delighted to have you. I'm so delighted to have you. Ever since I got to meet you in the region and get to know you, I'm thinking that we have a good relationship. I don't meet all of
Yes,
your
we do.
criterias. I don't think I meet all of your criterias as often as I should. But I still try not to be the worst in your that you have to deal with. So
Yeah.
thank you for coping with me. If you were counseling pastors' wives or overseers' wives, and you were giving them tips of do's and don'ts, what to look for, how to deal with things to make their life better and the life of others better, what were some of the tips that you would give?
I think we need to remember that we were called to serve, called because Jesus loves us first. That's the first thing. You know, we were called because Jesus loved us, and because He loves us, we are called to serve. I've said this so many times before, and I'll share it here. Um, uh, Going serving in the region, I've heard people say, um, "Well, you know, if they didn't, he didn't call me; he called him." And I say him because most time it's a male pastor, or he called her. He didn't call me. But if you are together as a couple, he called you both because he knew who you were going to be with. So we're
Mm-hmm.
called to serve together. And so, therefore, it's not a one person and the other person stays in the background. We're called to serve together. We're called to help each other in our church work, in our church world, in our relationship, and who we are and what we represent. And so, to give a tip in this, your spiritual life, who you are with Jesus, who He is to you, is what will resonate with who you are to others. If you don't let that personal relationship shine out, things will upset you, things will get on your nerves. A few weeks ago, I spoke on the scripture and the story with Mary and Martha. And we use that story a lot to say, Mary chose the better part and Martha was cumbered. But what made the difference in how they reacted to their brother's passing and Jesus coming is that Mary's relationship with Jesus helped her to respond differently when Jesus
Mm-hmm.
showed up on that fourth day, when he showed up late. Mary, rebuked him. If you had been here, my brother would not have died. Walked away. Martha did. I mean, Mary rebuked him. Also said the same
Said the
thing.
same thing. Yeah.
But when she was finished, she fell at his feet,
Yeah.
and that's what makes the difference. We can only survive. We can only get through all the hustle bustle with the people, with the things that get in our way, with the things that upset us, with the things that we think should be a certain way that may not be right, if we have a good relationship with the Lord and if we stay at His feet. We'll be able to smile, we'll be able to sing, we'll be able to rejoice in spite of it all. And I think that's what we have to remember now, because if we don't have that strong and right relationship with the Lord, we will crumble, we will bow, we will crouch, and will not be able to survive in these crazy times when things are so uncertain, when people disappoint us, when things don't go the way that we plan. We have to have that relationship with the Lord that helps us to look up and to stay focused on who has called us and what He's called us to do and how He's called us to serve.
Amen. Amen. I'm talking to and I'm taking ownership. Our First Lady in the Northeast region. Somebody that I love, respect, and appreciate a lot, and appreciate her ministry. And by the way, she is an ordained minister in the Church of God of Prophecy since 2009. Graduated from Palmer Theological Seminary with a degree in pastoral studies, and also holds a Master of Art in Religion. And she has a degree from Gordon Cornwell Theological Seminary. So she's not just a behind the scene pastor's wife just doing something. She is qualified herself and positioned herself to take ministry, not just with the pen in the office from an administrative level, but to take the word that brings life to everyone. I am so thankful that you joined me tonight, Lady Greenaway. I appreciate that. Thank you so much for joining me. What else you want to say to us before we let you go and get some rest? And thank you for just slipping this time in the middle of it after all of that hustle and bustle. I appreciate it because I know it takes a lot away from you, and I really do appreciate you taking the time. What would you say to somebody who is watching, who's that you say, I want to just say this to somebody?
Well, before I say that, I want to encourage you in your ministry, in what you're doing, because I know it can be quite challenging. I see that you have many platforms, staying busy with that every day. And obviously, the ORB Ministries and the Let's Talk with the Doc is something that's passionate to you. And I believe that when we have something that is passionate to us, we believe that God has called us to do, we need to do that with excellence. And so I encourage you to continue doing what you do with excellence in your local church and in your ministry here. So thank you for strongly encouraging me to be here tonight.
Strongly encourage you.
It's been a pleasure. I didn't really feel that my story was any story to be told, but I thank you for the opportunity to share that, and I do hope that it will be a blessing to someone. To everybody out there, I just want to say that serving Jesus is the most wonderful thing that we will ever choose to do. But if you do choose to serving, and as you have chosen to serving with all of your heart, do it with everything within you, do it with passion, and let that love of Jesus be seen in you, that it will radiate through your life. It will permeate the area where you are and everybody that you come into contact with, because this is not a time that we just need to, pretend, but we do need to walk the walk and talk the talk in these last and closing days of time. Everybody's out there saying whatever they want to say proudly and loudly. And if any time that we as the children of God should speak proudly and loudly, it is now. So I encourage you to do that. Love the Lord, love people, be intentional about what you choose to do and say, and be relational, because that's what Jesus would do.
I like that intentional thing. I like that intentional thing. And I know you kind of give me a little wrap up, but and just in case you didn't think so, somebody is saying wonderful story. So you're discussing your story. Everybody's story has its own effect, and what has not left my mind already from your story is the beginning of your Christian journey, and how that come to fruition, and the impact it had on your mom even at your tender age of baptism. That is speaking loud into my voice and into my heart right now. And who knows, your mom's destiny may have been decided by your youthful decision to step out and become a Christian because of what happened as a result of that. So because of that, I'm going to ask you, in your wrap, I did gonna give the wrap up, but what would you say is most rewarding to you? I should have asked that question. Most rewarding from a ministry, pastor's wife, administration. What would you say is most rewarding, and what would you say is most challenging?
Can I go with most challenging first?
You can take anyone.
um, I guess most challenging is every day being determined and disciplined and spending quality time with the Lord. Because as a ministry people, we get focused on the things that we have to do and all of the long list, the checklist that we have to tick off. Um, but what becomes rewarding is when we put that list aside and spend time in His presence. And then you realize, oh my gosh, why didn't I do that all the time? And as administrative leaders, as leaders in ministry and serving, we have so much to do, but we cannot do it well and edifyingly if we don't spend time with the Lord. And it might be a broken record, but it's important because sometimes we've become like parrots in just repeating things because we know to do it. I know how to sing, I know how the service is going to be, 3 songs, read a scripture, or it becomes by rote, but it needs to be an inspirational, inspiring thing. So challenging to stay there and to be disciplined in what we are called to do, rewarding when we get there and do what we are called to do. So yeah, that's challenging because I get up sometimes and I got to get out of the door. I've got to get to the post office. I've got to go mail these packages. We've got to get on this trip. And so some people say, well, at 8 o'clock, 6 o'clock every morning, I do this. Sometimes we don't get to do it on time. But if we focus and say, Lord, in our hearts, that we will make this time and spend this time, it's so rewarding and we become different people. And people can see that and they can feel that when they come around you and with you. And can you imagine if every single born again person did that, how that would radiate in our world and around us?
What a
So,
wonderful world it would be.
what a wonderful world it would be. Thank
Wow.
you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. My friends, thank you for joining me. And if you joined us late, you need to go back and watch this from the beginning and see how it started. Everybody has a unique story, and this was not any different. Uniquely and strategically positioned in a young life, beginning to love the Lord. Strange, strange, strange. You got to go back to listen and share it with your friends and let everybody get a chance to hear our First Lady, Christina Verona Greenaway. I'm putting in the middle at the end of it. Christina Verona Greenaway, her story, fascinating. Wonderful person. We couldn't have a better first lady in the region from my thinking right now to be our leader. And we love and appreciate you. We love and appreciate Bishop Greenaway. We appreciate both of you. You're working together, your spirit, your friendliness, your down to earth approach to meeting and interacting and no differentiation with anybody. That is just something uniquely special about you, and that's one of the reasons we love and appreciate you. You're never looking out for you, you're always looking out for us, and we
Thank you.
appreciate you a lot.
Thank
And
you so much.
thank you for joining me. Thank you for joining me. If you're just joining, you're late a little bit for the live, but you'll have a chance to go back and listen all of it all by yourself and enjoy it and share it. And if you're not following me on Facebook, make sure you follow me, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and by the way, I'm also on TikTok. So look out for ORB Ministries. We are taking ministry everywhere. We're not letting the devil have it and we stay behind the corner. We're tapping into all of it because somebody somewhere is going to hear that Jesus loves them. Until next time, I hope you will join me again on Let's Talk with the Doc. You never know what's next or who will join the conversation. So, see you when we come back. Lady Greenaway, you stay right there. I'm going to say goodbye to you offline. See you next week, my friends.
Nice.
Didn't I do that? Let's go. Well, thank you for checking in on ORB Ministries. I trust that you will share with your friends, subscribe, hit the bell for notification, and stay tuned, because you never know what's next or who will join the conversation.